So as I'm sure many of you have heard or seen, the reviews for God of War Ragnarok are in, and surprise surprise, Santa Monica Studios went all in, with most news outlets out there and content creators having given the game an almost perfect score across the board. And if you're the type who's still unsure if you should jump on the hype train after all of this, then rest assured that God of War Ragnarok might be one of the best games of all time. I've made a comprehensive list of some of the biggest praises that the game got, as well as some of the more common complaints, so let's dive right into it. But one thing all reviewers came to agree is that this is one meaty game, to the point that some of them even called it bloated, in the good kind of way. The game's main plot alone can last anywhere between 25 to 35 hours depending on your pacing, with many more side quests, additional objectives, and things to discover off the beaten path that can push a completionist's run way over 70 hours. In fact, one of my favorite quotes out there from one of the particular reviewers I liked is in regards to how Santa Monica Studios literally went all in and basically crammed 2 games worth of content into God of War Ragnarok, which makes sense given the fact that this was supposed to be a trilogy. But as a lover of completing side quests and finding hidden stuff, this sounds like everything I dreamt of from God of War sequels. Unlike its predecessor, Ragnarok will feel less linear and instead will provide you with ample opportunities to go off the beaten path and explore the massive improved sceneries of the 9 realms. The game has no shortage of boss fights either, with a lot of side quests that will eventually lead to legendary fights against some of the toughest enemies you can think of. Another thing that gets me super hyped is how seemingly all side quests will respect your time by rewarding you with items, upgrades, and other meaningful unlocks. Though it's only fair I also point out that some reviewers brought to the attention that some of these side quests do not provide any meaningful rewards and only some extra story, but even in that case I don't see it being such an issue. Another slight complaint I saw was how the main path and how focusing only on doing the main story can be detrimental to your progress, as most of the major upgrades, especially runic attacks, are hidden behind side content. So if someone were to focus on just that, obviously they would lose massively on what their build is capable of, which could lead to some frustration and repetitive combat. That being said though, to me that sounds more like learn to play issues. You can't really call a game massive or bloated and then complain that you didn't feel powerful enough or your build was lacking because you just stuck to the main plot. Furthermore, once you finish the main story is when a lot of the extra content and new areas unlock that you can now go in, take part in, and get the best loot, but also the highest challenges. In fact, some of these will even rival or further exceed the Valkyries in God of War 2018, so to me that sounds like the perfect outcome. With that out of the way, another major thing agreed upon is how God of War Ragnarok feels and is an upgrade on 2018 in every single way. Do not expect huge changes or revamps, but do expect the gameplay to see massive improvements to the original one with more fleshed out and new types of animations. One of the most satisfying aspects is going to be the combat, and it's still going to be its impactful feel that's further emphasized with a stellar sound quality for every single hit. This time around, the combat has taken a lot of hints from the original God of War games, which is now further emphasized in the way Kratos moves across the arenas and the way he uses his Blades of Chaos. While the Leviathan has remained pretty much the same, with some of the additional extra goodies like the triangle attack serving a new purpose, there's noticeable differences in the Blade's gameplay, as now it's more focused on grappling and hurling enemies across the battlefield. Verticality and speed is further emphasized by grapple points that let you quickly jump over gaps or reach higher up places using the circle, which adds new layers to combat and strategy. One such layer is how you can now split groups of enemies when you feel overwhelmed by simply repositioning yourself in combat and maybe reach out other targets that were left behind, and now you can take them on and on. Similarly, shields now have a much more aggressive component, which let you double tap L1 to interrupt these new powerful blue attacks that you will see enemies casting. But of course, they will also serve a much deeper purpose of just parrying, and parrying is going to play a much bigger role in Ragnarok compared to 2018. It also helps that enemies are much more abundant and diverse than ever before, with Santa Monica Studios really pushing the envelope on how much you can do with the controller in Ragnarok, Ragnarok, but also creating elaborate ways in which you can defeat these enemies. Now obviously there's also some downsides here, which mostly come in the form of the skill tree not being that much more different than in 2018. In fact, if you finish the previous one, you might even find yourself having to re-unlock some of the skills that you already had before. Call it battle rust, it can also be a setback for some, but unlike 2018, Ragnarok is set to give you all of those skills back way faster, as you will gain a lot more XP in the starting hours, so at least it kinda balances that out. Plus, there's new skills and new animations that you can further unlock on top, but don't expect too many of them. Another small complaint was in regards to the seemingly lower number of runic attacks compared to 2018, but that could have also been the lack of exploration on that reviewer's part. In any case, the new gear system will pick up the pace in some of these cases, which now gives you a lot more armors with focus on different gameplay effects. For example, elemental damage will play a much bigger role in the new gameplay, but also the way you slot some of these effects has changed, as now the game features a separate enchantment tab where you get to slot in your amulets and so on, instead of having all of these spread out on different pieces of gear. And let's not forget about the fact that the new transmog system will let you retain whichever stats you have while applying the look that you desire. All in all, the story is going to be something to truly remember. Between the amazing set of characters, the build-up, and the way these characters progress, is something that you're not going to experience in many games out there, with the game still retaining some of the more grounded feeling of the 2018 title, but this time around it goes a lot more deeper into the Norse mythology as you progress in the main story. Again, raising that comparison with the old God of War titles is going to include a lot more grand and overwhelming scenes like these ones right here. There's also a few contradicting statements on the game's pacing though, with outlets like IGN praising Sony Santa Monica for the great build-up and the stellar storytelling we got along the way. This doesn't just throw you into massively cinematic action sequences right from the start, but they also completely trample even the great starting hours of God of War 2018. Other reviewers out there weren't so keen on it, with quite a few of them feeling like the pacing was too chaotic, too all over the place, and with not enough time dedicated to polishing each character and their motives. And while I get why some people can experience the same thing in different ways, to me personally, everything I've seen so far from a story point of view is a massive hype moment. Chris Judge's performance as Kratos is yet again proof of why he's a top-tier actor, and the game's stellar writing led to discover sides of the main and sometimes even the sideliners a lot more than in 2018. What Culture, for example, notes that you might even get to root for some of the game's antagonists and discover sides of them that you weren't even aware of before. One common complaint here is in regards to how annoying your companions can be, especially with the two most common examples of Mimir and Atreus, who apparently cannot shut up and will comment on every little thing that you do and don't do, or when you don't do it the right way. Which to me sounds like a dream, because I always liked and actively searched for secret interactions and dialogues with these characters in the first game, so to me it doesn't sound like such a big issue, but I can see why some people out there might not like it that much, especially since there doesn't seem to be a way to turn that off. But I don't really care. The game seems to include a lot more comedic moments than ever before, including for Kratos, which I cannot wait to see and explore that side of him, which apparently is going to be a major point of God of War Ragnarok's main story. But Fimbulwinter is a great narrative mechanism to further bring life into existing realms and further expand on not just the ones that already are there, but on the new ones that we get to see, like for example in the case of Svartalfheim and some of the other ones. In Midgard, the new frozen lake of the Nine adds new exploration benefits, which translates to also using the sled to travel to places you couldn't necessarily before, but also feels more fun maybe than the boat we had in 2018. Others like Alfheim will provide new access to areas and puzzle mechanisms that weren't available in 2018, with a lot more cooperation going between Atreus and his father. God of War Ragnarok, on the other hand, won't let you forget that this is still a PlayStation 4 game first, with the loading screens disguised as tunnels or tight crawl spaces still being ever present throughout pretty much the entire game. On the other hand, using the fast traveling system will still have you go through the magic gates to Yggdrasil, as you still have to wait for the game to load into the next area, so That's still kind of a bummer, but luckily enough, the high performance mode on the PlayStation 5 and the absolute stellar optimization even on the PS4 should make you feel better. And pretty much everything I've seen so far for God of War Ragnarok just makes this the true masterpiece that the series deserves. I'm so glad that Santa Monica Studios delivered on everything they set up and maybe even more. This is truly a game that is worth $70 from the looks of it, maybe even more than that, given the amount of content that we get, replayability, and most important, end game stuff that unlocks and we get to do on top of everything else I've presented in this video. Totally let me know down below in the comments if you are going to pre-order the game as a result of these, well, reviews, and even more so if you don't or can't afford it. There's a current giveaway that I'm doing and a lot more that we're gonna be doing in the following days and weeks, so you can just take part in that by being a subscriber of the channel and leaving a like on this video. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.